Welcome to the Tri-City Herald Edit Board with Franklin County Sheriff Jim Raymond. His opponent, Chris Turner, is not here today. I'm Cecilia Rexis, and I'm the editorial writer with the Tri-City Herald. And joining us is Lori Williams. She's the executive editor of the Herald. We have Mike Paoli. He is a community representative. Ken Robertson is a retired executive editor. Jack Briggs is our retired publisher, and Matt Taylor is our retired editorial writer. So Sheriff Raymond will give you 2 minutes for your opening statement, and then we'll just start asking questions. So whenever you're ready,
All right.
I'll start the timer.
Well, I know most of you, so I'll try to keep it brief. I'm the sheriff of Franklin County, have been since being elected in 2014. Prior to that, for 33 years, I was a Pasco police officer, held every position in the department to include interim police chief before I ran for election and was elected back in 2014. I came into the office making some promises to the people of Franklin County. I made a promise that I was going to implement 21st century policing models, policies, and procedures as the sheriff in the sheriff's office and the corrections division, that I would remove the corrections facility from the federal decrees that it was under and the lawsuits, and that I'd develop law enforcement partnerships in the Bi-County region. I'd also develop community partnerships and acquire dual WASPIC accreditation for both the sheriff's office and the jail, and finally develop and implement extensive training platforms for the men and women of the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. I'm happy to report that I've done that. Those things are completed, and we've assembled really a pretty good team in the Sheriff's Office to bring the Sheriff's Office and our community into 21st century policing. So I'll just leave it at that, and we can go from there.
Great, thank you. So there has been some contention between you and the union for a while. I guess if you could elaborate on that situation and maybe what's being done to kind of heal that rift, if anything.
You're talking about the Teamsters Union. The
Right,
Sheriff's Office has multiple unions.
Oh, okay, yeah, Teamsters,
and this
I'm
is
sorry.
the Teamsters Union that about 2 years ago took over negotiations for the men and women in the actually corrections division. And there is no contentions other than, to be quite honest with you, the business agent, his name's Jesus Alvarez, who also was my campaign manager the first time I ran. He doesn't like the word no, and then he is basically taken 2 of my supervisory staff and sent them down roads where they shouldn't be going. They should be concentrated on doing the job and what the taxpayers are paying them to do. And ever since those things have taken place, there's been tension between the Teamster Union and myself as the sheriff. I'm a pretty strong-willed person. I don't believe that unions belong in police work. I think unions belong in police work to represent the employees for wages and benefits. But what we have here is we have a Teamsters Union that's trying to take control of the operations of a jail. And so long as I'm the sheriff, that's not going to happen. And so that's kind of where we're at. There's lots of things being thrown out there about it, but at the end of the day, you are all free to walk in to the sheriff's office. We'll let you talk directly to any and all the employees inside the jail, and you can ask them what their opinions are. And I think you'll find that it's diametrically opposed to what the Teamsters tries to put out there.
So what do you foresee? Do you foresee some closure coming soon, or is this just going to be an ongoing issue there? I mean, I guess we're trying to figure out where it stands.
So the attorneys for me, you know, that represent me, said that they have never seen this type of unprecedented attack by a labor union towards a sheriff. Never have they seen it. So I suspect not. You know, right now, I have turned around and filed legal proceedings in Franklin County Superior Court against the Teamsters to get them to stop. I was elected as the sheriff of the county to run the jail and the sheriff's office, not the Teamsters Union. And until they get that an understanding that that's the way it is, so you know, there you go. I know that Cameron and a couple other people from the Herald has made public disclosure requests on this topic, and all of that's coming sooner or later for them to review it to make an understanding. But at the end of the day, it comes down to two supervisors that weren't doing their jobs, and that's supervising in the jail. They were too busy doing union work, and when I said, no, we're not doing that, you're going to do police work, then we have problems that started. So it's not the first time with unions and police administrations that there's been conflicts, and it won't be the last.
Okay, great. Any
Sure,
other questions? Go ahead, Jack.
Sure, if I see that the office staff endorsed you, what about the road deputies? Are they in the Teamster Union too, or is it a separate union?
No, so I am endorsed by my command staff, by the FOP patrol deputies, and by the sheriff's.
What's FOB?
What's that?
What's one of those initials stand for?
FOP, Foreign Order of Police. Yeah, the deputies on the road, their union, if you will, is the FOP. So I'm endorsed by everybody in our organization, except for the corrections deputies. But if you look, you'll find that most have actually personally endorsed me from the jail also. You gotta understand that with the jail, when I was elected sheriff, it was under a federal court decree. Myself and the commander that runs the jail were immediately sued in federal court. And we went for almost 2 years negotiating with the federal courts to fix those decrees and get ourselves off those decrees. And the agreement was that what we'd do, we'd get down to doing police work, and we'd basically reform the jail. And we've done that. And then ultimately that we would receive accreditation through WASPIC, which is the Washington Association of Police Chiefs and Sheriffs, for accreditation, and that we'd do that. And that requires a lot of things to get there, and it took us 8 years. But we have a finely tuned running jail that's open and transparent. And as you know, Jack, when you start calling into question employees' behaviors and hold them to a high level, then of course, you know, it's everybody else's fault except for the person that's actually creating the problem. So that's where we're at. But yes, I'm endorsed by all of my staff.
Any other questions?
Well, there have been several, you've had some deaths in the jail, and I'm wondering if that's something you want to talk about at this point, since we're talking about the jail. And, you know, you said you've, you know, really worked hard to come up with the, you know, fixing some of these training issues and things like that. So how is that fitting into that? Because it seems like, you know, you've had these troubles.
Well, actually quite well. So you're talking about 4 deaths in the span of about 15 months, if I remember correct. I could be off on the months. 2 of them were actually suicide. And then 2 were, one was a medical emergency, and then the other was, well, she was a mentally ill person that actually she died of an overdose. So what happens when you have those deaths, of course, you do the criminal investigation first, you package that together, then you hand it over to the county. The county then reaches out. In this case, it's WACO, the Washington Insurance Authority, and then the deaths are investigated administratively. And then after that comes the what we refer to as IAs, or internal affairs, looks at those deaths. So today, all 4 of those deaths are with the Washington Insurance Authority. In fact, this week, an outside investigator is coming in to review all the deaths and to ensure or not ensure, if you will, that policies and practices were in place And so that's where we're at in the process. So we're about 3/4 of the way through with those 4 deaths. And we'll see what the outcome is in the end, and whoever needs to be held accountable, I'll ensure that they are. But here's the biggest problem with deaths that are starting to occur in county jails, not just ours, but all county jails, is we're using them as a dumping ground for mentally ill people, and then you're taking and you're making cops, for lack of better words, try to babysit mentally ill people that they're not equipped to do, that they're not equipped to even handle. So you have jails across the state, to include mine, that are trying to bring in-house services such as doctors and psychologists and nurses and all those type of things into the jail setting to try to alleviate some of those issues that are occurring. But the problem is we have more customers, if you will, than we have room in the jails, which is creating some of these mistakes, what you want to call them, from occurring. So for example, today I have 10 rooms, if you will, padded type of rooms, and every one of them is full. And you walk down and you check on those type of individuals, and you'll see one in the first room, you'll see a guy laying on the floor talking to the wall. And we're putting them in 8x8 spaces, and that's not a good thing. And then you go to the next one and it's a different set of problems. And the next one is a person that's totally nude, hovered in the corner talking to themselves. And all of those are, well, they're hard to manage and handle, even though we have somewhere like $1.5 million just in medical costs that we try to address these problems with people coming in. And it's just a growing problem. And it's not, our jail's not the only one to have had these types of deaths, but it's something that we have to fix. And it's going to continue to grow if we don't figure out other alternative ways to address it.
So it's less, you're saying it's less of a staffing issue or even an equipment or facility issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's really the handling of the mental health.
Well, yeah, we're just, the jail staff's just, they're just inundated with that type of problem. But every time someone comes into the jail for booking, there's medical staff that meets them, there's mental health staff that meets them, and they go through a series of processes just to be accepted in the jail. And the minute we go, well, this person's been here before with mental illnesses, then we have to isolate them. We have to make sure that they're ready to go into general population or the COVID concerns or all the other things. So we have a facility that's about 330 beds. We are taxed at about 250 as far as inmates go. We have one wing that's basically we refer to as a hospital wing, and then we have these 10 rooms that I talk about that are high observation areas that we try to monitor those individuals by video camera, physical checks every hour, and then once a day mental health and medical staff checking on them. And it's daunting, to be quite honest with you, because it's a jail. And all kinds of things are going on. And so we don't know if they've snuck in narcotics, in their body cavities or those type of things. And if we're not watching closely, then you have these type of things that happen. And then quite frankly, some of it is from employees in there ignoring policies and training standards that they've been trained to do. And so, they're mistakes of the heart, if you will, not the mistakes of this. But, it's a combination with every one of those deaths that have occurred. So it's not the same as when I took over sheriff with the deaths that were occurring and that created those, the whole federal decree and all those type of things. It's really the opposite. Is the system is just overloaded, and somehow we got to figure out how to fix that. I think I have a good answer to that, but it'd be nice if.
Well, Sheriff, you've been a strong proponent of the recovery center.
I am a huge proponent of the recovery center.
And there's been a lot of changes in that with the refusal to sell. Now they're sold, Benton County taking over instead of a bi-county. Are you happy with what's going on with the recovery center?
Well, I think we're going to eventually get there, Jack. And the answer is no. In the very beginning, when there was discussion about purchasing the KGH campus and those type of things, the idea was a full wraparound service, one-stop shop for people that were in crisis to drop them off in Howland. And in the very beginning, when we started collecting the 1/10 of 1% tax, I told my commissioners and the Benton County commissioners that it had to be an equal partnership. But what happened is politics and pressure came in place. So Benton County went out and purchased the recovery center on their own. And then they agreed to things that are bothersome to me, like you can only keep somebody there that's mentally ill for 3 days, or, you know, those type of things that took place. But I believe in the end, we're going to get there. I am a strong proponent of the recovery center. In fact, we have our next meeting tomorrow. And the idea from law enforcement and from people in the community is they want the cops to be able to pick somebody up in crisis, drop them off into an ER type of setting and go, here, you all handle them, give us a call when you need us to come pick them up for, you know, the criminal reasons or all those type of things that occur. And so it's getting there. And then once you get there and decide that you're going to have this full wraparound service, then you're going to have to find staff, which is going to be a problem for the Tri-Cities right now because we are understaffed in the mental health field. But my belief is if we can get everybody to drop their guard, look at all the, you know, the nonprofits that are out there in the Tri-Cities, the hospitals, you know, what we do have for a mental health service in Greater Columbia Behavioral Mental Health, and everybody come together and sit down and do what's right for the community. I think we're going to have the model that people are going to emulate, but it's going to require that politicians and people get out of the way and let the people do it. But it's all in place to do that. It just has to be done.
Matt, you had a question?
I just wanted to ask him a couple of questions, maybe. How's the food in the jail?
So what we do is in our jail is we contract that out through a food services vendor. And then the food service vendor has to meet nutritional requirements or special dietary requirements or those type of things. So the food is brought in 3 times a day and delivered to the inmates 3 times a day, 365 days a year. And it's all under contract under what's called a commissary system, so that it's, you know, the best bang for the taxpayer's dollar, and they all meet or exceed those nutritional levels.
How you doing for gasoline?
Gasoline. Gasoline is expensive right now. We haven't got any pushback from the commissioners, anybody. We just pump the gas and go do our jobs. But, you know, for the sheriff's office, we're going to probably be somewhere about 75 to 100,000 in the hole for our fuel costs by the end of the year at the rate it's going. Right.
Y'all going to get electric police cars over there?
No, I don't know how that would work in a county setting. We're 1,300 square miles, and so I don't think there's enough charging stations throughout the county. But the county itself is going to get electric cars through a pool car system, so we'll balance it that way to make sure we're meeting those requirements.
Thank you, sir.
Sheriff, there was an interesting story in today's paper on the distribution of money from the public safety taxes, which was floated to the public as a means of cutting crime and reducing gang activity. But when I read the story, I find that only 13% of the money has actually gone for gang and crime prevention. Are you happy with the distribution of that money?
Well, I'm not happy with the distribution of Benton County's money. You know, I mean, that's been a long argued thing that's been going on over there. I think if you talk to like Chief Holmberg and some of those people, that they don't believe it was distributed correctly. For us on the Franklin County side, from the very beginning, all of the money has went to the Pasco Police Department for services and implementation. And most of the money, the vast majority of the money actually went for reconstruction of the jail and jail services in Franklin County. And there's only about, last time I checked, about 185,000 a year that's left over here. And all of that's actually pumped into my budget for police services, that little bit that's left over. But Benton County now, my perception, my opinion is they're using it as a savings account. And they're not releasing as what it was intended for, that they sold to the people that voted it in over there for what it was supposed to be used for. So hopefully that answers your question.
I heard that it was also used to build the new Pasco Police Department. Is that true?
I don't know that. It could have been. I know that some of the money was built to build the municipal courts down that's below the sheriff's office here in the beginning. But I'm not sure about that 100%. That's our side of that money. I think the sunset's 10 years, and I think that that's coming up reasonably soon, and is going to have to go back to the voters in Franklin County if we're going to reinstitute it. So.
Anyone else have any questions? Mike?
Yeah, first, Sheriff, I've been on a number of these. You're the first one to have a go at this without having an opponent speak. So this is sort of more like a press conference for you, I think, than a back and forth. You don't get any breaks. So I'd like to tip my hat for you for sitting through the barrage without any breaks. Congressman Newhouse, who we've had in this forum before, today sent out his regular newsletter talking about how Central Washington is facing an all-time crime high, which he attributes directly to defund the police rhetoric. So there's going to be two questions in here. Is it just rhetoric, or have you seen any impact on your department? Probably not directly, but perhaps indirectly from surrounding counties from defund the police rhetoric. And would you agree with Congressman Newhouse, or perhaps have another explanation of why crime is as high as he says it is? Unless, of course, you don't even agree with that statement. Is it at an all-time high? So I know there's a lot in there, but basically, is crime skyrocketing, and is it a cause of defund the police?
Yes, crime is skyrocketing. We were just, Cameron and I were talking about that before it started. If we look back, I think in the past 6 weeks or so, in Benton and Franklin County alone, there's been over 12 homicides. That's unprecedented. When I was a young detective in the early 80s, Pasco had the dubious honor of having 17 homicides, and we led the West Coast in crimes per capita on the West Coast. I'm sure Jack can remember that. But now, today, what we've done is we have legislators that have basically gotten rid of laws and put into the hands of our criminals the idea that they can just do whatever they want, taking away probable cause, or you have to have probable cause before you can do anything. You've seen all these things happening, school buses being stolen, rammed into houses, Kennewick police standing by a summer while, someone took out half a dozen of their patrol cars until they could, quote, develop probable cause to arrest them. In the last 3 weeks, you've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and as of the other day in Selah, 7 police officers shot at. And so out of those 7, you've had 2 that have actually been hit. The latest, biggest one being the state patrol trooper who was just writing a ticket to somebody, and some crazed guy decides to come up and empty a gun into his face. So yeah, it is a problem, and the way you fix it is you put law and order back into the hands of law-abiding citizens and police officers, and you start enforcing the law, and you take a zero tolerance approach, and you'll watch those crime rates go down. So, yeah, he's correct to a certain degree, but some of it we brought on as citizens of this state by allowing some of these laws to be changed and stuff to quote defund the police. I'll just give it to you in Jim Raymond terms. It's the most ludicrous, stupidest thing I've ever seen this state ever do, is to turn criminals loose on the law-abiding public, and then everybody else has to answer for their actions, and then let them, in some instances, actually continue on with their crimes because legislators have written in these little clauses that create problems. Or let's talk about the simplest of things. You know, the ruling of 870 shotguns that the cops couldn't use them because the caliber was. I mean, there's just not well thought out things that have taken place that are creating some of our problems. Some things were good. In-car cameras and videos, those are all good things. No chokeholds unless it's life or death. No, that's a no-brainer. That's a good thing. So some of those reforms or defund the police things need to take place, and we need to embrace them and move forward. But as a society, and me as a taxpayer and a law enforcement officer, some of this stuff is nonsense, and we need to stop it before our communities continue to be more unsafe, and more unsafe.
What can you do to influence the changes you see that need to happen in legislative space?
Well, I'm pretty tuned in to who my legislators are in the state, and most of them, to be honest with you, are from my party. The answer I've given to them is, I'm tired of this. I want you to go and step up and get these laws reverted back so that they're reasonable and they protect our society. And if you can't do that, then let's find somebody else to do it and get them out of there. And it's interesting to watch that whole political scene, because the big drivers of the legislators that were big at changing all these laws and stuff and reverting them just out of whack, they're all not running this time. Now there's new people running. So I'm hopeful that if I'm boisterous enough, or we are boisterous enough, that we can get some of this change back in the next sessions that are about to come up and move them back, because a lot of those naysayers that did this to us, for lack of better words, they didn't even run. They're not even running. So hopefully it changes and we do what's best for our communities and society versus, you know, political differences of those type of things. The law is equal for everybody, and it just doesn't make any sense to me why we would tweak things that didn't need tweaked.
In the meantime, I assume there's a corresponding impact on morale for your people, and perhaps even recruitment. What have you, or are you taking any steps to essentially address the problem as it's manifesting itself?
Yes. So here's what I've done. First of all, I haven't had an opening for 2 years. Don't ask me why, but I have no openings in the sheriff's department right now, other than some people are going to retire after first year, so that'll create some openings. But what I did, I sat down with my guys and said, look, you know, you have volunteer firemen and firefighters out in the county, and they're just farmers and, you know, those type of people that are responding to some of these things that you've essentially been outlawed to go do. You just continue doing it. I'll stand in the gap. I'll take the heat for y'all doing the right thing. So our deputies have never stopped, you know, responding to mentally ill people, or, you know, all these different things that, you know, the legislators said, well, mental health can go do that and this and that, because they didn't think it out. We've continued to do those things. We're still full service. We just ask the deputies that when they're doing things to keep in mind some of the pitfalls that are out there while they're trying to take action to keep people in our community safe.
So what would you say are the top two things on that list that need to be fixed?
You need to fix the pursuit law, and you need to to move that back, the pursuit law, and you need to move all these laws where they said you had to have probable cause. You need to move it back to just cause, you know. So in other words, you know, the cop's driving down the street and he sees, you know, he sees you, Lori. And he says, "Oh, that's Lori. I think she has a warrant," you know. And so you want to put back in the cop's hand the ability to go, "Yep, she does have a warrant. I'm going to go arrest her." Or, gee, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I just watched Lori run out the front door of the AM/PM. I wonder if she robbed him. I'm going to stop her for now and make sure that she did or didn't rob. The cops can't do the simplest of things like that anymore. Or, you know, they're dispatched to a house. It wasn't our county, it was another county, of a possible shooting. And they're watching the suspect run off into the woods, and they're going, well, we got to see if someone's actually been assaulted first. And they go in the house, and by the time they get in there with authorization, they find a woman dead, and they're going, oh, the guy that ran off is probably the one that ran off. They're still looking for that guy. Those type of things are stupid. It's ludicrous. And somehow we have to right those type of things. So I would say those are probably good 3 examples for you. Just basic common sense things. Cops are smart people. You know, if it's so dark 30 in the morning and a car's driving down the wrong side of the street, probably a pretty good chance that it's a DUI. So if the cop turns on the guy to stop him and he runs off, and you go, well, yeah, I can't do anything, and they let him run off, and then they go down the road and kill somebody. Those type of things need to be changed. Those are real life examples. So yeah, you just need a little bit more common sense.
And just to follow up on what Mike was asking real quick, with the increase in crime, you know, how much of that is attributable to the mental health crisis? Because you're telling us, you know, there's so many cases. I mean, I think 4 of Benton County's homicides, they've got those 4 up, you know, getting mentally evaluated, because I mean, they're very clearly have issues beyond the
Well,
regular.
I would say the vast majority has to do with that, especially right now. I mean, you just have to get up. I encourage y'all to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and come on over to Paso and drive down from Road 100 to 3rd and Court Street and look and see what's going on the streets of Pasco, for example. It's huge, and you know, psychosis and drug-induced psychosis, they work together. They're really one. And so you have to figure out how to address those things. And people that aren't in their right mind do really stupid things. We'll use Benton County as one of their major homicides. I forget the guy's name. You know, the cops picked him up in West Richland, took him to Cadillac Hospital, said, look, something's wrong with this guy, fix him. They leave. Cadillac goes, well, we can't fix him. And so they're all trying to figure out what to do with him. And he shoots out the door and goes down and stabs his mother to death. We got to figure out how to fix those type of things. That's going to reduce a lot of crime. And we need to start erring on the side of safety first versus a person's, you know, rights of, well, you can't hold him because there's no probable cause, or those type of things. And as you know, in days of old, Jim Raymond could be pushing a cruiser around Pasco and go step out and talk with somebody and go, well, that's not right. You know, this person's not in the right mind. So Jim Raymond had the ability to go, hey, you know what? I'm taking you into protective custody. I'm going to run you over to Richland and drop you off to somebody in a secure setting, you know, that can evaluate you. And in the next 72 hours, they either file court documents or they release you. Those days are gone. And there's actually more of those psychotic episodes that are going on in our communities now than there ever was before. But yet we've taken all the tools away for the cops to try to handle those things.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, that sort of leads us back to something you brought up, to my mind, a little indirectly. And it seems like some of the issues toward getting the counties to work together toward a solution are political. And, you know, over the years, I've sat in editorial boards and talked with you and talked with the Pasco city manager and the Pasco police chief and the Kennewick police chief and so on, you know, and we seem to have 6 county commissioners, and the names don't really seem to matter.
No.
They can't figure out how to get things done. Instead, they spend their time arguing. I know that's got to be terribly frustrating for all of the law enforcement people. And I know it is for others as well. So Jim Raymond is generally pretty dang blunt and outspoken. What do we need to do?
Well, it depends on what topic you're talking about. Politically, if you're talking
I'm
about
talking
commissioners,
about the mental health issue.
the problem with county government, as I see it, is there's not enough commissioners. So you have this gerrymandering, I guess is how you want to call it. You know, you get 2 commissioners against one, and away they go, and it drives it one way or another. And I think that if there's a little bit more equality when it comes to voting, we'd get down the road quicker and faster. And I think that's just part of our counties growing, politically speaking. The other problem is you have to remember that the chiefs of police, they work for a city manager. So they're going to usually be pretty docile. They're not going to say a whole lot. And then really the only ones in law enforcement circles that can speak up are the sheriffs, because sheriffs are either elected or not elected by the people. As I go into my 41st year, you're right, I've been blunt all my life, and I'm going to continue to be probably more blunter in the next 4 years with some of these issues, because what happens at the end of the day, look, it doesn't impact me. It impacts you and your neighborhoods and those type of things when politicians don't see through the fog, you know, because they're too busy looking after themselves instead of the community. So I think we keep pushing forward. We keep being outspoken. I think the people, by voting and saying, look, we want to take a 0.1% tax by countywide and start collecting for mental health services, and let's build our own program. I think that's a pretty good green light. And I don't see where they said that the 6 commissioners get to be in charge. I think that we all need to be in charge and just make it happen. That's how I look at things. And if I step on people's toes, well, I guess I step on people's toes.
Jim, I think in some of your literature, you said that law enforcement success is based not only on crime statistics, but also on the unity of the community. Doesn't
That's
seem
correct.
like Franklin County has got a lot of unity. Are you to blame for any of that?
I think Franklin County actually has a lot of unity. If you look outside the political arena, I mean, the sheriff's office alone, we have a foundation that works with us, and we work for the community. We have a sheriff's advisory board. We spend a lot of time interacting with our community. Instead of writing tickets, we go up to the schools and interact with the kids at the schools and try to stay connected. Look, the more you sit and talk with people, the better off you are in police work, so that we can get to know what Jack really thinks and what Jack wants, and so on and so on. And if you think of it in the sense of community policing, that's why I wrote that statement, is if you don't community police, in other words, let the community police themselves, and you help them police themselves, then you're destined for failure. And that's kind of the philosophy that we have here. And I know the Pasco Police Department has that because I came from there. So yeah, that's kind of what I meant by that statement.
A lot of the friction has come out of the Franklin County commissioners. Did you endorse either one of them?
I have not endorsed anybody. I do support, in this instance, Clint Didier, and I support him for obvious reasons. For me, at least. I mean, we played football in college together. We've been friends since 1978. I believe him to be passionate, and I believe that he tries to make decisions in the best interest of the people of the county. Therefore, I'm supportive of him. But at the same time, I've been supportive of Brad Pack. And I'm obviously been supportive of Rocky Mullen. I think actually the three commissioners we have are good for each other, believe it or not. They just need to learn how to play together in the sandbox a little bit better, and they can get some good things done. I don't know that's going to happen, but you know, they were elected, and until they're unelected, I'm going to be supportive of each and every one of them and try to help them get where they need to be. That doesn't mean that I'm going to sit back and be quiet, but I'm going to be supportive of them. This county is, man, it's just growing faster than it can keep up with everything that's going along. I mean, you can't keep people right now from county administrators down to HR directors and workers. Just it's about money, it's about movement. There's a lot of jobs out there, and then there's also personalities that obviously that come into play. So I'm going to be supportive of them. They are my government, and if it changes and it becomes someone else in those seats, I'm going to be supportive of them.
So you aren't feeling the let's say the toxicity and the hostility that was discussed by those HR directors who left. You said you haven't had any openings, but clearly you go to the meetings, you're in the courthouse. Are you not seeing that in other departments, or have that affecting you?
Well, it hasn't affected me because I'm an elected official. So everybody in the sheriff's office, they actually work for the office of sheriff, not the county. So some of those type of things I have always worked well with human resources. From both of them that have left, never have had big problems. We've had our differences, but we got along well. I think that you'd have to look at who was pushing them that caused them to leave. And trust me, it wasn't just those three commissioners or one commissioner why they left. They're leaving for money and some of the other political things from electeds that have occurred. So you can't lay the blame at the feet of just the commissioners. It's about trying to figure out where the communication breakdowns were, or why you perceive me how I perceive you, and being able to have an open mind about those type of things to break down the toxicity that people are trying to say is out there. So look, Commissioner Didier is a spirited guy. Brad Peck is he is an intelligence communications officer out of the military. Rocky is a businessman, and they are never going to see eye to eye all the time just because of their backgrounds and their personal upbringings and stuff. But I believe Franklin County's come a long ways from from the 80s and the 90s to now, and it's experiencing growing pains, and they just need to figure out how to get the job done for the people and try to control their personal opinions and beliefs the best they can.
You've taken us down memory lane a few times into the early 80s. If I might sort of go down the same road.
Sure.
When we had all the murders, I remember going to the Pasco Police Department, to Glenn Butner, who was then head of detectives. And he showed me the surveillance equipment the Pasco Police Department had. And it was one set of binoculars, one eye of which was broken. And when you look at today's paper with the millions of dollars, how times have changed.
Yeah, really it has. I mean, I talk about the 80s, and I was 21 years old when I was hired as a Paso police officer, and I got the dubious honor of patrolling downtown in the east side of Pasco. So my world was, it was in full motion movie, and it was best described as the Wild Wild West. So yeah, Glenn Butner's passed away here a couple years ago now. Yeah, so a lot of those guys I'm still in contact with, and that's when I entered the department. It was about the time Glenn Butner was either being fired or retired or whatever all took place, and Cliff Nelson and all those guys. And so, yeah, I've got to see the Pasco Police Department, law enforcement in general in Franklin County, really grow from its infancy to what it is today. Great equipment, great support from the people. You've been around long enough, Jack, you know that decisions were made at 2 o'clock in the morning in the city of Pasco down at a restaurant at 8th and Lewis with the councilman that back then. So it's come a long way since then. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sheriff. I don't know, does anyone else have any questions? We covered a lot of topics, I think, so. All right, great. Well, thank you. This was great. You almost filled the whole hour by yourself. That's wonderful. Thank
Well, I
you.
appreciate that. Yeah.
No, that's great. I think we
Yeah.
covered a lot.
It's literally, this is going to be my last run. If I'm elected, we're going to concentrate on finishing out the radio projects, which is to make our CCOM dispatch center, make it a standalone agency where we can, everybody can be equal users of it, which is, you know, the intended where it needs to be. I'm certainly going to ride the waves of the recovery center implementation. And then we're going to finish a bi-county posse program that we've started, but we're going to finish it and implement it between Benton County and Franklin County. We're going to have a sheriff's posse / search and rescue unit because of the reserve units going away and police work, which is going quite well. And then ultimately put together a succession plan for whoever the next sheriff is. Redo accreditation, dual accreditation one more time, and then put together a succession plan. So that's,
Maybe
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, maybe one thing you might want to address before you wrap up is, you know, if people are not familiar with your challenger, your opponent, maybe you should address why you feel you're better than he is suited to win this election.
Well, I certainly have way more experience in executive law enforcement experience than my opponent. You know, I don't want to sound critical, but I surround myself with law-abiding professional law enforcement officers, and I certainly haven't been terminated in the past 41 years. And I have a plan. I set goals and objectives and missions and those type of things every year for the sheriff's office. And I think my work product and where the sheriff's office sits today speaks volumes about what we are. And I just don't see where my opponent has remotely the background or the abilities to continue on with the upward trajectory of the sheriff's office.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you very, very much, Sheriff Raymond.
You
It's
bet.
delightful. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Good
Sheriff.
seeing you, Jack.
Yep.
Ken.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.